After West Kelowna dragged its heels on its decision to block a permit for American Christian musician Sean Feucht's Let Us Worship concert, leaving the tour with little time to find an alternative location, the worship lived on. On Saturday, August 23rd, around 2,000 people showed up to the Diverted event on a beautiful rural property located just outside of Kelowna in the unincorporated Joe Rich area. And spoiler alert, contrary to what the city, local media, and LGBTQ activists likely wanted you to think, zero hate was detected and not a single safety issue in sight.
Do the things Paul did, do the things Peter did, and be unafraid and preach the gospel. Because as you can see tonight and last night in Edmonton and the night before that in Saskatoon and the night before that in Winnipeg, there are thousands of people that are looking for bold leadership.
Our elected leaders need to hear from the public, and elected leaders that won't stand for freedom are not elected leaders that support a free and democratic society. They shouldn't be in office.
Disagreeing with someone's lifestyle means you hate them. I don't believe in that. I came from that community, the LGBTQ community, and I love them, but I don't live that life anymore. I'm born again and I'm saved and I'm happy.
Drea Humphrey here with Rebel News, and did that look like a hate event to you? That's because it wasn't. But before I show you some of my interviews with Feucht and attendees, I want to uncover some of the forces that wanted you to think that that's what that was. As many of you know, 9 out of 11 jurisdictions across Canada blocked Feucht's peaceful worship concerts from public spaces. All but Saskatoon and Alberta took a page out of the COVID tyranny playbook, which saw only Christian churches fined and pastors imprisoned in the name of public health, and claimed they were blocking the concerts in the name of public safety. And what else did all of those jurisdictions have in common? Well, they all had a far-left cancel culture mob that was lobbying for them to do so. West Kelowna, being no exception, claimed they had to shut down the concert from its Memorial Park due to public safety reasons, because between too many bad Christians and anti-Christian worship concert protesters who might show up, they couldn't handle it. The city's administration officer said approximately 2,000 worshipers were planning to attend, which seems fair since both in 2023 and 2024 for Feucht's BC stops to Coquitlam and Langley, many did show up. But they also claimed that a whopping 1,000 protesters were expected to show up against the event. So how did Mayor Gord Milsom and City Council come up with that number? And even if a couple of thousand did gather, why is that impossible for the city and, according to them, the fire department to handle, considering events comparable in size just took place recently at the exact same park, such as Music in the Park and West Side Days events? Well, like any journalist would do, I asked them those questions so that you could have transparency about their decision, both in email and via phone call to the communication director, Ashley Stewart, who assured me she would get back to me, but despite me following up again, never did. Perhaps that's because I also asked how much the LGBTQ activists lobbying for the city to shut down the Christian worship event weighed into their decision, and how canceling a Christian event because activists may protest it aligns with the city's commitment to inclusivity. Phew, ghosted. But LGBTQ activist Wilbur Turner sure had some answers to spread on Kelowna Capital News, who's previously defamed Christian practices before and refused to ethically correct them when I caught them doing so. That news outlet, run by Black Press Media, gave Turner an outlet to write this article entitled, "When Leaders Cry Persecution to Excuse Hate." I'll give it to him here because even Turner admits that the cancellation of Sean Feucht's public concerts across Canada were driven by concerns of those who believe that Christian worship is sometimes used as a guise to partake in hate. But then Turner contradicts his own admission on who was in the driving seat behind West Kelowna's cancellation and reverts back to the city's lame excuse when he calls out Kelowna Lake Country Coldstream MLA Tara Armstrong with the One BC party for not buying that narrative either when she wrote this. Feucht wasn't being blocked by West Kelowna because he's a real threat, but instead because of his faith and political views. You know, views like disagreeing with drag story times or telling kids that they were born a mistake. Armstrong adds that the city's reaction was outrageous and a blatant attack on the freedoms guaranteed by the Canadian Charter. A statement Turner disagrees with. In fact, in his article, which I've linked for you to read and enjoy in full in the description box below, then goes on to suggest to the public that Christian expression in Canada isn't even under attack. I guess all the burning churches, the imprisoned pastors, arrested street preachers, and the rise in hate crimes against Christians isn't enough for him. Or the fact that Feucht says he's getting more resistance leading worship in Canada than he did in Iraq. Feucht's not really a proper Christian worship leader. Instead, his events are simply political rallying points disguised as spiritual gatherings to attack his queer and trans community, reproductive rights, and pluralism under coded Christian nationalist language. Now, where have I heard something so absurdly bigoted before? Oh, that's right, from our socialist BC premier, David Eby, when he said this is what Christians are actually doing when they're being led in worship by Feucht.
I disagree with him using music to go after people who are gay. I think it's pretty reprehensible.
But the irony of Turner accusing Feucht of pushing a political agenda when he himself is the president of the LGBTQ advocacy group that was behind the so-called Love Over Hate protests planned against the peaceful worship event that citizens wanted to enjoy in a park. Think about that. That means that the whopping 1,000 protesters figured that the city used to topple on top of the Christians who wanted to come in order to use it against them by denying their event a permit was likely handed over on a silver platter to the city from Turner or his team. And then Kelowna Capital News allows him to do this hit piece without providing such context, or of course about talking about the actual hate that's taken place at the Feucht events in Canada. Of course, it's hate against Christians, like we saw in Montreal, where anti-Israel protesters showed up at the church that took in the event, thus making it a worship service. And this man marched into that worship service, lit not one but two smoke bombs, and hurled it at Feucht and his Canadian worship team mid-service. No mention of that at all, of course. It appears that Turner and his allies never made their way to the diverted event, but members of the Kelowna Atheist, Skeptics, and Humanists Association did, I guess, to spy on the Christians so they could catch what, of course, never took place. Certain media apparently was not permitted on the private property, which isn't really too surprising when you see pieces like Turner come out, I suppose. But Rebel News was there to show you what actually happened.
Because the mandate the Lord gave us to come here and release worship in 11 cities is to see the defibrillators of God be released on your life again.
Why was it important to come here tonight?
Because God is good.
All the time.
Yes. We heard it from our auntie, and as soon as she told us, we wanted to be here. She's from up north, so when she told us that they were coming here, we wanted to be here.
How are you, Sean? You made it. The concert went on.
We made it. You know, the city of Kelowna said no, but God said yes.
Well, I think it's a great event to host out here. I might be doctrinally different than, say, Sean Feucht, but worshiping God out in nature here is a beautiful thing, and getting together and worshiping God is a good thing.
It was important because I'm a Christian, I love God, and we're worshiping together, and we should be able to worship together in public, really, in the city. But we're out in the middle of the woods, which is beautiful. And I just believe that we should all be able to come together as the Church of Kelowna. Like, there's churches represented here. Like, I feel like every church, maybe not everyone, but Maybe them.
Well, I just wanted to be here and see what the ruckus was about. Obviously, it's a fantastic family event. I brought my family here today. Fantastic event, great community spirit here, and just a really wonderful, peaceful assembly in Canada. It's what the Constitution protects, and I'm glad to see it happening here.
This is Kevin Gowie. I've actually interviewed you a few times before about something crazy, and I'll tell the people why in just a second. But let's start off with what you felt like when you heard your city's decision.
West Kelowna gave up on the Sean Feucht concert. Of course, we were disgusted. Like, how can you turn your back on a bunch of Christians wanting to worship God? Like, what are you expecting? And apparently they were expecting a bunch of wild, crazy, violent, I have no idea. But that's the sad state we're in. And fortunately, it came through for us, and it's been an incredible event. And I just hope and pray that the media covers it openly and shows it for what it really is.
They had to be sort of pushed out into the woods and were not allowed to perform in your city.
I was sad. Yeah, it was awful. But God came through. Amen.
Yeah, thousands, I would say. I'm not sure how many.
I think it's better out here anyways. I like it out here.
Mayor and council and their decision to basically say that this is a public safety issue.
I think really it is they just don't like the political stance of Sean, and there's a lot of Trump derangement syndrome in Canada, and it's easier just to say no than it is to maybe look silly to the people that really complain about that.
Of course. I kind of saw that coming. But, I mean, I wasn't paying attention too closely, so I kind of thought that they already got denied and that they just weren't going to be able to come. And I was like, that's such a bummer. Like, of course, our city, I don't even feel like we're the most liberal, but apparently we are, because I thought our mayor, he was a little bit less liberal and he would kind of vouch for something like this, because it's clearly peaceful, it's clearly joyful.
I disagree with him using music to go after people who are gay.
Our premier, David Eby, came out and basically straight up said, and he's a lawyer, by the way, he said that Sean Feucht is using his music to go against the LGBTQ community. What do you make of that narrative coming down from our premier? And it's going pretty strong in the media as well.
Yeah, well, when it comes down to it, if you just stand on the truth of the Bible, it comes across as very bigoted when people don't like to hear anything about them being perhaps living in sin or doing something that is not right. They get very offended when anybody tells them that there's any kind of standard of truth.
I don't really care about Eby. He only, well, I'm speaking the truth.
What's that thing?
No comment.
What's that thing?
I believe God is great, and he states what is right and what is wrong.
You'd have to not listen to any of his music to think that. You'd have to not listen to anything he says to think that. So apparently just disagreeing with someone's lifestyle means you hate them. I don't believe in that. I came from that community, the LGBTQ community, and I love them, but I don't live that life anymore. I'm born again and I'm saved and I'm happy. And I just know that sometimes when it comes to like your identity, if someone doesn't affirm that, nowadays you feel like they hate you, and they don't. So I'm not surprised.
I just hope it drives them to listen to my music, of course, they want to certify. If he says that as fact, then everybody out there needs to go listen to the music so they can for sure make sure he's not lying. So that's my hope, is that it actually draws people, as it has been every night, to actually go, I wonder if this is true. I wonder what's going on. And of course, we know when they show up or they hear the music, it's nothing like their hearings.
This is a narrative. I mean, if you've been at this event today, what you're seeing is music. You're seeing Christian themes that would be familiar to anyone who comes into a church or any other Christian event. It's really concerning to see our government officials turning on a peaceful, public, free, family-friendly Christian event and to spread a narrative, to spread a story that has no basis in fact. This is a Canadian organized concert tour. Sean has come here. not even charging for this. And so the idea that what we got going on here is something the government needs to shut down, it's very concerning. It goes against freedom of expression. It's a targeted attack on religious beliefs in many cases. And quite frankly, many Canadian governments need to be ashamed. From coast to coast, we've seen a lack of freedom, a lack of respect for freedom. Really, Saskatoon, the mayor of Saskatoon, they let the event happen, respecting freedom. Alberta let the event happen, but otherwise in Canada, it seems like you got to be in the countryside for freedom, and that's a real indictment of Canadian society right now, and we need to push back against it. We really do.
The overreaching message is Christians believe in the second commandment, which is love your neighbor as yourself, and we do. That doesn't mean we have to condone what everybody does. We can love people, and we do, and we wish the best for absolutely everyone. We want peace, we want love. That's what's going to solve everything going on in the world. But to try and frame people as some kind of bigot like that, it's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous, and again, it's hypocritical. Zero tolerance on one side and expected tolerance on the other doesn't work. It's a two-way street. So.
In the middle of the woods, lifting up our hands to Jesus, we're never gonna regret this. In fact, many of us will think, that was the one time I got it right. Holy, come on. Holy are you, Lord God Almighty.
Your local media, Kelowna Capital News, which actually is how you and I met because they put out a horrible piece and refused to take it or properly retract it of you praying during a parental rights protest. They put this picture up and depicted you as a Nazi. So people can find that by searching your name, Kevin Gowie, and Rebel News. But I saw another piece come out of Kelowna Capital News that was basically calling Sean Feucht a fake Christian, saying he's pushing a political agenda, and silly, there's no persecution against Christians. What do you make of your local news doing that?
They're corrupt. They're not telling the truth. It's that simple. They fabricate stories and lies. That's how they sell news, I guess. But I think that's falling apart. I think people are getting smart. People are wising up. They can see the truth when it's blatantly in their face. So I'm hopeful that we've turned a corner on that.
I didn't know that they were so well versed in what it means to be a Christian, but I'd love to tell them, like, all it is repent, trust in Jesus, follow him, and as far as it looks like, he's doing that really boldly. In terms of persecution, it's increasing, but we don't stand up enough as a culture. We're very passive, maybe passive aggressive, so I don't think a lot of us actually experience the persecution we would if we actually did stand up. So it's waiting in the wings for us, but we don't see it.
Yeah, well, they certainly have no right to decide that. And the reality is that we lived through COVID here. We saw what happened. We saw the crackdowns on the church, and we experienced the reality of rules for some and not rules for other. And so after living through that, it did change my perspective, and it changed a lot of people's perspective on government and also on the way that Christians are treated in Canada.
They're actually the people pushing a political narrative, and I think that's the irony of the whole situation, is they're actually the ones making it political. I'm not making political statements. I'm not pushing a political candidate. I'm an ambassador of the King, and I'm preaching the gospel, and I think they just don't like the gospel. And so in order for them to try to block that from happening, they want to say that it's political, even though it's not. So, but the good news is they're drawing a whole lot more people to come than would have come. So it's working a lot in our favor.
As a lawyer who defends constitutional rights in your cases, what have you noticed over the years? Is this just business as usual when it comes to what's happening with Christians, or are you seeing something else?
Well, this attack on worship events across Canada, this is not targeted against any other religious group. This is a vocal minority who doesn't like particular Christian themes that might be said in other locations, but attacking Christian worship events because of different beliefs that are, disputed within Christianity. Well, guess what? That is really an attack on your freedom to have those beliefs at all. And if you can't have a worship event in our society, then what freedom of religion do you have left? And we really need to think about that. And it's a concern. Canadians are here today, and they're showing that they actually value this freedom. And I think we're going to see some pushback here, and hopefully some political leaders that say, no, we were wrong. This was not an event to be shut down.
I think there's a little bit of actual Christophobia happening there too, because they're saying that this wasn't safe enough for the public. But I'm just going to go to a flash of one of their journalists, Kelowna Capital News. And this is what happened when you said, you should come to my church and see, this is how people pray. And she was scared.
That's right.
And I'm going to give you an olive branch right now. Mm-hmm. I'm going to invite you to our church on Sunday.
Okay.
So you can see how worship is done.
Like just as a single, like a woman on my own, that people won't be like physically violent or anything like that. Is that correct? If I attend, I just have to ask. Are you
kidding? You're joking, right?
Okay, good. I'm glad.
No, I'm dead serious. That had to be a tongue-in-cheek comment.
It's all a fallacy, and it's all just part of the narrative they want to push. It somehow gives them license to go after Christians, create the narrative. It's ridiculous, and it's so hypocritical, because if there is violence, it's not going to come from the Christians.
Now, I remember interviewing you in Coquitlam in 2023. Thousands showed up there. But since then, you said it yourself, you're the most hated Christian in our country. Mm-hmm. What do you think the real reason is that that's happening?
I think because I am, and we are, exposing the heavy anti-Christian bias that is currently in Canada. And we weren't trying to do that. We were trying to come, just like you said, in 2023 we came, in 2024 we came. I mean, I've been coming here for 20 years. But I think for this time, we are now exposing that there are enemies of God that actually don't want Christians to do what they've been doing for thousands of years in these cities. And that's why you've seen not one city or two cities or three cities cancel. You've seen 9 cities cancel. And I think that people are starting to wake up, and they're starting to realize, wow, maybe there are people in our government that want to shut Christians down.
I want to ask you specifically, what do you think the church should do in that area?
The church in Canada really needs to grow in boldness. I think that's my biggest thing that I could say is, we need to have leaders that are bold and that are unashamed and that are willing to stand up to government officials when they're wrong. I mean, basically, we need pastors and leaders and Christians that will live the book of Acts. Do the things Paul did, do the things Peter did, and be unafraid and preach the gospel. Because as you can see tonight, and last night in Edmonton, and the night before that in Saskatoon, and the night before that in Winnipeg, there are thousands of people that are looking for bold leadership.
At Rebel News, we play a vital role in Canada. We tell you the other side of the story to the mainstream media that time and time again has belittled and diminished the rise in attack against Christian places of worship and their followers. If you appreciate the role that Rebel does and you want to stand for religious freedom, whether you're religious or not, please sign and share our petition at letusworship.ca.